Real Podcast, because wrestling needs us. Brought to you by KingofAmazon.com. Go to KingofAmazon.com when you do your shopping for Amazon to help the King of Podcasts. Shop for Amazon at KingofAmazon.com.
This is not going to be a easy show to do tonight. Given just a couple things that have really, number one, a story that has really just, it shocked the wrestling world, and I didn't realize it would shock people to such an effect. But when you hear the story of the passing of Shad Gaspard, you wouldn't think, he hadn't been a direct focus for a while. And it wasn't because, he wasn't a great father, wasn't a great person from all accounts. I've been reading all this weekend, and, nothing against what he did in the ring. But, there's been an outpouring of sentiment here from the wrestling world and wrestling Twitter, all putting their points across, as we learned tonight, following an accident where he, well, I'll tell the whole story, that he was involved in a drowning accident in which he was trying to save his son from being drowned, got caught into a riptide. And instead, while his son survived this possible drowning, he did not, and succumbed, was called missing for several days. And just earlier today, police officials said his body washed ashore, and his body was confirmed and identified as his. So he has been, people had the real feeling of that it was apparent and evident that it was not going to be a good situation. The situation looked very grim, and that's what exactly happened. We have what the wrestling world is saying about the shocking passing, the death of Shad Gaspard, who was best known as, paired along with JTG, with the tag team Crime Time in the 2000s of WWE during Ruthless Aggression, and was a notable tag team at a time when tag teams were at such a rough spot during that time, to be honest with you, because remember, there were not that many tag teams out there, and tag team wrestling was just, it was secondary. So, there was a thing where, they were popular, but they were, in essence, always kind of a more or less of a mid-card feel to it. But people remember that group. People remember Crime Time. That's no doubt about that. So with that said, I also going to go ahead and talk about, I just finished watching the Owen Hart episode of the Vice series Dark Side of the Ring. I'm going to talk about that tonight, because that's another story that's just wow. And I have some stories to talk about that, because I do remember watching that pay-per-view May 23rd, 1999, Kemper Arena, Kansas City, Missouri. I remember Over the Edge. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But again, a couple of things of tragedy, and then we'll go ahead and wrap things up. We're going to talk about the upcoming AEW Double or Nothing show coming up this Saturday. And we'll look at some of the things. Some other thoughts about WWE right now when it comes to their ratings issues, because they took another plunge. And so all that's going on tonight. We'll talk all about that. So if you're looking for everything is involved with this program, just know that I have done some work and rebuilt the website. It's not on a WordPress site anymore. I put it on a Blogger site, because I know a lot of people are finding the show outside of what was put in the website, because, what I was doing with it, it was, it had a nice presentation. It looked good, but I just think I needed something more functional, because the website I had on was just not going to hold up. So with that said, I decided to go ahead and move it off to a Blogger site. Made it look as best as I can. Looks better now, and I think that's what I'm going to be able to go and hold on with it. I'll look at their options. I could really use some help to go ahead and put some funding back in so I can go and do some more things. But I am trying to always do things to improve the show, improve everything around it. Let me tell you all about that real quick. So, first of all, to help support this show, well, first of all, the website is wrestlingisreal.com. If you didn't realize, I've promoted KingOfPodcasts.com, which is now my personal portfolio. You can still find the link to the show there. But for everything that's a wrestling show, Wrestling is Real Podcast is now officially at WrestlingIsReal.com. That's the official site for the show. Past archives, previous episodes, all that's there. You'll also find some news headlines I put up there on a regular basis, links to where you can subscribe to the show and where you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and now on TikTok. I just added myself on TikTok a couple weeks ago, so I put all that together. So that's what's going on tonight. Most importantly, to help out this show greatly as I go and put the show together each and every week, and all of my content, which not only is this just show, I also do the Broadcasters Podcast, where I really do more of a media watchdog thing and talk about a lot of things. I also do the series called When I'm Not Podcasting, which sometimes I'll talk wrestling, but mostly I'll talk about other things, just whatever I feel like that I haven't talked about on the other shows that wouldn't fit. I don't like to go into tangents. I'd rather have that show as my umbrella to talk about everything else that's not podcasting. So that's the one we put right there. So that's available on YouTube and on its own page. So you can all find all that at KingOfPodcast.com. Everything I'm doing, if you want to check that out. But for the wrestling stuff, it's WrestlingIsReal.com. And especially the real place you can find wrestling news and my commentary is at Facebook.com/WrestlingIsReal. Great places to go ahead and fill out. And also there's a contact form if you want to go ahead and make any comments, questions, things like that you want to go ahead and mention on the show. You can also do that there and go ahead and send some information to me. Email address is kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com. Kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com. And finally, one of the best things you can do to help out the show is to go to my Amazon link and buy from Amazon. Listen, watching on a Fire TV is one of the best things you can have. Having Prime is something I have for years. I have Audible. I greatly use Amazon for a lot of things. I do a lot of shopping, especially during quarantine. I've done a lot of shopping on there. If you're looking for household items that you can't find in the stores, they regularly have like the household wipes, the sanitary wipes. If you're looking for hand sanitizer, if you're looking for products you can't find in the stores because there's just certain things you can't find in stock, then by all means, go to Amazon through my special link, KingOfAmazon.com. That's KingOfAmazon.com. Okay, the story of Shad Gaspard. Let's go into originally what his whole story is about. We're going to talk about that first, as we kind of just do a whole recollection of what he did. First of all, I'm going to take the story from TMZ, and we'll take that from there real quick and follow along with that. So now, the L.A. County Coroner has identified the body found on L.A.'s Venice Beach as ex-WWE superstar Shad Gaspard. The body was first seen on the beach by a citizen who will call cops here on Wednesday as I record the show, the 20th of May at 1:30 a.m. Wednesday. According to law enforcement sources, TMZ was told officers responded and recovered the body right near Venice Pier. A short time later, several people told that were family members and close friends gathered at the beach. They were hugging, talking, and crying. At one point, some of the people waded into the water. The LA Fire Department held a news conference Wednesday morning, saying the body matches the description of Shad, a 6'6" black male, over 240 pounds. As we first reported, TMZ reported on Sunday afternoon he was with a group of swimmers when Shad and his son Arye got caught in a rip current south of the Venice Pier. Shad heroically told lifeguards to focus on getting his 10-year-old son to shore safely, but when they returned, he'd gone under a riptide current. Police and Coast Guard boats and divers searched the rough water for nearly 2 days before suspending their efforts. And, it was known that Shad loved hanging out at the beach, and less than 2 weeks ago, he'd posted a heartwarming video walking through the sand and surf with Arye saying, quote, "Love the life I built for myself and for my family." He was one half of the popular WWE tag team Crime Time along with his partner JTG, a regular at the legendary Gold's Gym in Venice, and we learned firsthand was a truly great guy. Now, as for Shad Gaspard and his career, age of 39, he passes away, born January 13th, 1981. The story made Inside Edition, Entertainment Tonight, a lot of coverage, CNN, a lot of coverage on this story tonight. And that was, in fact, his real name, Shad Gaspard, born in Brooklyn, New York, was Haitian and Curaçaoan descent. His father, Ben, a former enforcer for street gangs and then a personal bodyguard in the 1970s. He worked for gangster Frank Lucas, which is best known by Denzel Washington portraying him in the movie American Gangster. He trained at a young age in different martial arts such as judo, jeet kune do, kickboxing, and Muay Thai. He was given the nickname by his mother Beast because of his aggressiveness. At age 16, began prize fighting for promoter Hardbody Harrison, a former world championship wrestling wrestler and FX Tough Man champion. He competed in bar fighting tournaments such as boxing, kickboxing, mixed martial arts, MMA, and tough man competitions. Gaspard holds a win-loss record as a no-holds-barred fighter of 35-7, amateur boxer 57-26. Now, after that, he actually played sports in his high school years, wrestling, track, and basketball. Also played at Georgia Perimeter College. Became a bodyguard for several rappers and actors. He was a bodyguard for Britney Spears, Puff Daddy, and Mike Tyson. How about that? Joined Ohio Valley Wrestling. First of all, he was in Tough Enough 2 in 2002. Disqualified and replaced after failing a physical. He was recruited by Dr. Tom Pritchard, and was brought in and trained with Sergeant Dwayne Bruce with the WCW Power Plant for 6 months. Afterwards, he attended Pritchard's first Ohio Valley Wrestling training camp, offered an opportunity to train full-time, debuted in OVW in 2003 under the rename The Beast. He eventually joining Kenny Boland's Boland Services stable. He actually acted as Boland's personal enforcer until he was placed in a tag team with Carlos Colon Jr. in February 2004. Later on, 2006, he would have a OVW feud with CM Punk, and he was joined by the Neighborhoodie and formed a new tag team known as the Gang Stars. The team would win the OVW Southern Tag Team Championship. They will be called up to the roster under the name Crime Time, CRYME, September 4th, 2006. They started having vignettes airing on Raw to hype the debut. Debuted on October 16th, 2006. Debuted and defeated the then World Tag Team Champions, the Spirit Squad, Mikey and Johnny. Now, one thing to note is that with WWE, he never won a tag team title with Crime Time, and never won a singles belt in his time in WWE. So now they didn't do well, went back to OVW. They were sent back. And then they returned on the March 31st, 2008 episode of Raw. Then they would work in 2008 on the June 30th episode of Raw, going after John Bradshaw Lethal in a match that they had where they would vandalize JBL's limo in a very popular segment. Now, they did go after tag titles. They were actually going after the tag champions at the time, Ted DiBiase Jr. and Cody Rhodes. And they did steal the championship belts for a time, but they would lose the title match to them at that year's Unforgiven pay-per-view. So they were really very much so mid-card. They were never put into the main event in any particular matches or anything that we did. And honestly, there was always a lot of teams that were put together that were makeshift teams that were brought on to go ahead and work together. So, for instance, if you see some of the matches they had against who they had, at the time, you had Chris Jericho and Big Show that were a tag team, and they faced each other. And there were others, but really not too much. And on the April 2nd, 2010 episode of SmackDown, Crime Time were defeated by John Morrison and R-Truth. Again, this is when they were just putting teams together because they had some tag team matches just to have tag team matches, but it was not a major focus. So in that match, Gaspard would taunt JTG by showing footage of attack. They would make a heel turn on him, and Gaspard would go ahead and switch off. So Gaspard would turn heel. They split the team up. And then Gaspard would be put on a hiatus from television, was sent back to developmental to Florida Championship Wrestling. Final TV appearance was on the May 14th episode of SmackDown, where he defeated Jesse Guyver. On November 19, 2010, he was released from his contract. So it's been 10 years almost since we saw him last in a WWE ring. Now, he did go independent for the last 8 years, worked with NWA Pro, worked a lot of independents across the board, but he did work with a lot of notable wrestlers. Did work with Colt Cabana, Dane Demento, among others. And he also did tag with GTG. They did wrestle together and did make appearances. Gaspard was married to fitness model and athlete Solana Gaspard. They did have a child, Arya, who is 10 years old. He did have some issues where it was really some things that were just kind of notable about his career. Is that there was a point where he did prevent an armed robbery of a Coral Springs, Florida gas station when he was approached by an intoxicated man who was intent on robbing the clerk. Gaspard shoved the man, took away his gun, and restrained him until peace arrived. Now, the other thing that also happened with him is that he actually worked a lot of television. January 2012, he appeared on the BET television series The Game, which was a huge show at the time. TV and original situation comedy The X's in October 2012. And was also working on upcoming films. Besides wrestling and acting, he also modeled and was working on a comic book. He also performed in a stage adaptation of Pugilist as Jack Johnson, the first African-American world heavyweight boxing champion from 1908 to 1915, depicting the boxer's rise to the world heavyweight championship and his tragic fall. So if you look in his work, he also was in quite a few movies. He actually, for the movie Birds of Prey, the Fabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey, he performed stunts in that movie as part of that. And also, his body was molded for the video game God of War. And also, he worked on video games such as SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 and Batman the Enemy Within. So again, Shad Gaspard, age 39. For his career, I mean, obviously we already saw. I just think that Shad Gaspard, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was just where he was just never cut the break. I think WWE really utilized him badly. I mean, yeah, putting him together with JTG and putting that group together, that was a memorable tag team. But again, it's in the same vein as The Godfather. It's in the same vein as some of the wrestlers. And I don't know if it's just something where they really didn't know what to do with them too much. But they are part of the WWE lore. I mean, they were around long enough to be recognized and remembered. And obviously, people definitely remembered everything that was going on with Shad Gaspard. They were all in memory of what was happening to him. They definitely remember who it was. A lot is said about that. So that's really what it came down to. WWE did put out a statement, and they did say on their Twitter feed earlier this afternoon, our thoughts are with the family of Shad Gaspard. Please continue to keep them in your thoughts during this difficult time. When you look at the wrestling world, one thing that's also got to be said is that there were a lot of people that were talking about what he meant to the wrestling industry, and I think that's what's more was fascinating to me. It's not in a good way. I mean, they looked at him and they definitely had a lot to be said, but there were a lot of wrestling wrestlers that worked alongside him. Had a lot of good things to say. So, Tommy Dreamer, he says, "I will miss your smile and your giant hug. You made everyone feel happy and safe. You are the ultimate father." Natalia, Natty Neidhart, the world is also a wonderful human being. Shad Gaspard is a true hero in every sense of the word. I'm keeping his family and loved ones in print my prayers right now. We love you, Shad. Moose from Impact Wrestling. I know we weren't really close, but the funny thing is every time we saw each other and spoke, you would think we were boys since childhood. I know a good heart when I see one, and you had my friend a good heart. R.I.P. Shad. Posted some pictures as well. Triple H, I join fans around the world as we remember Shad Gaspard as a beloved performer and caring father. Bella Twins, you have truly a magical soul, always made everyone laugh and smile. You'll be so missed by so many. You're truly a superhero forever and always. Titus O'Neill, my love, thoughts, and prayers go out to the family of Shad Gaspard. Nothing will fix the loss of a loved one. As a universe, we owe it to ourselves and to others to be a positive light in this world as long as we can, because nothing is ever guaranteed. So a lot of people giving comments, and there's many more as we're seeing throughout the night as this is all going on. So it's unfortunate. I mean, there's nothing I could say much about his wrestling career, but obviously there's a lot of talent with him. I mean, he multifaceted. Worked in a lot of different... First of all, a lot on his plate. Obviously, devoted father, devoted husband, from all accounts. So, I mean, can't say a whole lot about his wrestling career. I mean, he was a journeyman wrestler. I mean, he did wrestle, and, you know, he was probably never given the opportunity to really shine like he could have. And that is the thing about being in that. They were obviously in that WWE bubble, but then again, at the time they were around, there was no other place to go. I think with Shad Gaspard, if you would think about it, you know, if we had the competition of other wrestling organizations, if there was an AEW or a WCW at that time, I think Shad Gaspard and JTG or either or, you could have seen them go to another organization and excel. I really believe that could have happened. I mean, I just think that if you put Shad Gaspard in a different environment, the guy had the look, had the size, very agile, flexible, big guy. Like he had the look, had it all. And for whatever reason, they did not do right by him and by GTG, you know, in the same way. It was just kind of just there. But I mean, for what it was worth, you know, it's unfortunate. I mean, more than just, I mean, regardless of him being a wrestler, just as a person. A lot of people remember him, and a lot of people have great memories of him. So I want to go and extend, as part of the Wrestling Show podcast, as the host, want to go and extend my condolences and respects to Shad Gaspard and his family and friends and those that are missing him right now. I wish him Godspeed. With that said, I'll go ahead and move along and talk about Owen Hart and Dark Side of the Ring. Now, as I said, I remember that night over the edge. So at that time, it was kind of fun. Basically watching 3 pay-per-views a month and catching them all in my little black box. I had a Scientific Atlanta box. All of you remember that was like that in those days, where they didn't move the digital yet. It hadn't been that point. So you could still find, you know, was it in demand or which one? I think it was in demand still at that time. So the pay-per-views were still available, and I could watch it on 2 different channels. So catching movies or whatever, I had my little black box, and I had bought somebody else for $150, and I got to milk that thing for 2 years dry, watching Sunday night pay-per-views, whether it was an ECW pay-per-view every 3 months, or it was WCW and their monthly pay-per-view, or it was WWE. And remember, 1999, that is the heyday. Like, that was, you're really, you know, you're still deep into the Monday Night Wars. Everything was going on with that. And what the Dark Side of the Ring portrayed about Owen Hart, it's absolutely true. I mean, Owen Hart was odd man out. He was a square piece that needed round holes. And it wasn't because he wasn't talented. And I always figured that was the whole point. Because, again, I think Owen Hart could have been better used anywhere else. I think the best thing he really did was when they did have him feud with Brett. And Brett put him over. And the Black Heart, the King of Hearts, I thought all that was really good. His heel run was fantastic. And from everything we always heard, Owen Hart, man, so much adulation by the locker room. What a great family, man. That family, I mean, for me, more than anything out of that Dark Side of the Ring story, is look at that family he left behind. What a beautiful, sweet, loving family. I mean, we would all hope to have a family like that. Martha sounded like, you know, supportive and just, I mean, it just sounded like a real good household. And a huge family. Obviously, with the Hart family was Stu and Diana and everybody. And Brett. And just look at all that nucleus of family that he had there. that's a big loving family. Think about family reunions with those people. That family was something else. And you see the kids, man, they're awesome, man. Oj and Athena, they're great looking kids. Look like they're really successful. I got to give credit to Martha. After everything I've always heard about Martha, because as a wrestling fan, you're thinking, what's going on with all this right here? The lawsuits and, Owen Hart, just the way everything was being handled after that. The whole wrongful death lawsuit. I mean, everything that was going on with that. And that whole story, man, that was just a tear. And you would hear that in the wrestling rags. I would just see the news boards and just see that just kind of just be falling apart. It's just incredible. So as for his career, I mean, obviously, there was a lot more that could have been out of Owen Hart. And I guess that's why I never really put him there and always have him as point of mind. Because I always felt like Owen Hart, man, that guy never got what he should have got. He was, they should have considered. I mean, this is where when they have real wrestlers, they're in that attitude era. The real wrestlers that were there, they weren't considered. Chris Jericho best said it, that give it a couple more years. Owen Hart would have still, if he was still interested in singing wrestling well after into the 2000s, he would have had the Radicals. He would have had Malenko and Benoit and Jericho. And oh my God, he would have had some major players at that point. So if I'm right, Jericho did not even debut yet. There would have been so much that could have been. I mean, Owen and Jericho, forget about it. At that time, it would have been a great starter feud for him. Then Angle. And then, again, look at all that you had right there. I mean, Rey Mysterio coming in after that. Eddie Guerrero. Jesus. Lots of great matches. A bundle of matches. And when you think about it, he would have been around till after WCW. Who knows who could have had really great matches with at that point? Because you would have had a lot more wrestlers and a lot more in-ring performers that were more in-ring than there were promo cutters. Would have made a big difference. And didn't happen that way. It's unfortunate. So I think his situation was that he was part of a generation that was part of that rock and wrestling era at the tail end. And they were going through significant changes. And man, he had to go through some bad times too in the mid-90s with all the bad gimmicks going on. And WWE was trying to find its next new direction to keep themselves fresh because they were just stuck in bad times. So he was there at the start of it. He was at a very good time with his brother Brett, everything going on with that. And then really get into a comedy gimmick. You just kind of felt like, man, after Owen Hart with the career he had, it's like, man, he's a second-class citizen almost feels like. He doesn't feel like he's respected in that company. And I always felt like, man, I always felt like, it was the kind of the Brett screwed Brett kind of thing. And Owen Hart was always kind of the scapegoat for it. And I always felt like that was going on. But man, that night, and I remember watching, what was it, like an hour into the pay-per-view, and all of a sudden, when I heard Jim Ross say that he died, man, it was quiet. I still watched the show because I was hoping to hear something else going on. Because just like everybody could just see that show didn't feel right after that. I don't even know how everybody even got out and did the matches. I really don't know how they pulled that off. The wrestlers that came out there and did what they had to do to finish up that night, man. And for the crowd not to really know what was going on because nobody had the kind of thing with cell phones and all to really pitch up what was going on the internet that quickly. It wouldn't have been that fast enough to go ahead and find out because there was no Twitter, no Facebook at the time. So you're looking at all that, and I'm just saying to myself, man, sad, just tragic. And then you read the story about that the rigging was not even the proper rigging. No matter what, the bullshit of having to compete head to head with the company. Man, whose idea was to go ahead and mock Sting? What a bunch of bullshit, this company. Why would you do that? That was horrible. But they did. That's what they chose to do. And so with that said, I'm just thinking about, I'm looking at what they did with him, and match with the Godfather, I mean, it was a mid-card match, somewhere in the middle of the card, right? Fourth match in, and just felt like, whatever. But, man, and even that pay-per-view wasn't like something over the top. I remember some of those pay-per-views I would watch, especially late in the Attitude Era, some of those pay-per-views, you'd have to wait till the end of the night because some of those matches would just not matter early on. Like, because I never really cared much for the IC title because I don't think it had not much of a real significance later in the 90s, right? I mean, you were having the Hokey Hardcore title, IC title that mean much to me. I just felt like they kind of, it wasn't, at that point, they were not even properly using it to ramp up the next star. Because leading up for The Rock and Stone Cold and Mankind and all these others, and Triple H, they all did the Intercontinental title run and they did it proper. I felt like the IC title wasn't really getting that much of the play at that point. And so, like, really, tag team titles, not really existed to me. It was just like, But for me, it was like, it was the main titles. It was your first, couple, 3 matches at the end of the night. That's what you really cared about. And that was it. That was what I felt like with WWE at the time. And WCW felt the same way. It's just like, but I watched them. I intently watched those shows. And, it was fine. All I know is I watched the night and I just had a stunned look on my face. And I just felt weird. I remember going to work. Next day, I was working at Channel 25 at the TV station. I was talking to a friend of mine about the whole thing. My friend Neil was also a big wrestling fan. And we talked about it. I was like, man, it sucked, man. It was just like, what a rough way to go, man. I'll tell you what. Very unfortunate. But, what are you going to do? It's just a shame to see what Owen left behind, because I think wrestling didn't even matter. I mean, why would wrestling matter to him? It was just a lifeline. It was what he did, like he said, in order to help him really get himself up to... for him, it was a lot about making it so that he could, make a living for his family. A family he really loved a lot. I mean, look at that, man. He was big time on that camcorder, right? He was using it all the time. Obviously a lot of footage. So they really, it was a loving family. I mean, he didn't get to see his kids grow up. I mean, if you think about it now, man, I mean, he'd be 55 years old right now, right? He'd be 55. And think about it, man. He would have been around with Brett. And, I mean, who knows, man? I mean, honestly, the other thing that's got to be said, too, Bret Hart and the animosity he has with Vince McMahon and the WWE the whole time, for him to go in and get these two to kind of patch each other back up a little bit, and we're able to go and work with each other, that's amazing. Because I'm pretty sure, I mean, nothing was really said about Bret Hart, but Bret Hart, we know, after WCW, besides the fact of how he got screwed in his wrestling career in WWF, is the fact of what happened to Owen, and that Owen carelessly was not taken care of, and WWE is they were negligent in not properly protecting one of the wrestlers. If it wasn't necessarily them, it was somebody they contracted to make sure to protect their wrestlers, and that was what's most important. But for me, more than anything else, when I look at that show, I say to myself, man, those poor kids. I mean, you could just see Martha is very strong. What a good woman, I feel like. Everything I always felt like it was kind of off about her, because I always heard about the stories of how the Hart family were against with what she was doing. They made that point, but they made it definitely for the family to go ahead and tell the story as opposed to everybody else. I think the Dark Side of the Ring did a great job of portraying the story. Very well done. Tragic. As tragic as the Von Erichs and how that family went through, and to see something like this go on, it's a shame. Saddening to see. I feel bad for his family. That family looks like it's just a wonderful family. I mean, look at that. Beautiful wife, beautiful kids, loving, lot of big heart in that whole family. You could just tell. And he didn't get to see those kids grow up. 3 and 7 years old. Never got to see them grow up. And it just sounded like he was a good guy. And he was a prankster in the back, and he was loved, and great sense of humor, and just all around good guy. Again, I hate doing shows like this, man. 2 stories of 2 all around good guys, and a lot of good to be said. I mean, you really think about when you think sometimes about the wrestling business and the character of certain people that we have, and just looking at that there are those people that are real good characters that are amazing people. And it's just, it's a shame to see all that happen. I mean, it's unfortunate. But, oh well, what are you going to do, right? It's very unfortunate. Hate to see what happened to everyone here. And, again, I feel bad for that. I feel bad for the Hart family. It's just awful to see all that happen. Just awful to see that. So unfortunate. All right. Let's try to move ourselves into a better direction now. Because, this solemn stuff is not for me. I don't like doing these kind of stories. But it was important to go ahead and, first and foremost, talk about both these stories. Thought it was very important. So moving along, I'll quickly go ahead and talk about where things are with the upcoming Double or Nothing pay-per-view. Let's go ahead and talk about that first real quick. So it's coming up this Saturday. I want to do some preview predictions for it and just do a few comments about it. It is an interesting pay-per-view. And I don't know how much of an audience you're going to have for that, but obviously we've heard a little more crowd noise going on, along with the heels and faces out there. It'll be held at Daly's Place, where they've been filming right there with the home of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But they're going to do something different to make this pay-per-view definitely stand out. So it looks good. I don't know if it's going to feel like it's going to feel kind of odd or anything like that. But we'll see how they work it out. Now, first of all, a lot of matches in here. Buy-in is already scheduled. Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn will take on Best Friends, Chucky T and Trent, and a number 1 contenders match for the AEW Tag Team titles. Dustin Rhodes will take on Sean Spears, the chairman, and that just got added to the pay-per-view. Chris Statlander will take on Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Casino ladder match at the moment, we have Darby Allin, Colt Cabana, Orange Cassidy, Ray Phoenix, Scorpio Sky, Kip Sabian, Frankie Kazarian, Luchasaurus, and one yet to be named. MJF will take on Jungle Boy. Nyla Rose will take on Hikaru Shida in a women's championship match with a no disqualification stipulation. Cody versus Lance Archer for the AEW TNT Championship, the inaugural crowning of the TNT champion, with with boxing great Mike Tyson, who will be presenting the new TNT Championship belt. The Stadium Stampede, the Inner Circle, it's going to be Jericho, Guevara, Hager, Santana Ortiz versus the Elite, which will be Omega, the Bucks, Hangman Page, and Matt Hardy. That'll be good. Stadium Stampede, the plan is this is going to be 2 rings, where the 2 rings will be put in the middle of TIAA Bank Field. It's an 80,000 seat football stadium. And anything goes, falls count anywhere pretty much. It looks like for the Stadium Stampede. If there's anything else we don't know about, we'll figure that out. But that's the plan for this match. I don't know if it's like a War Games match and they kind of set it up where just everything goes out. But we'll figure out what the whole Stadium Stampede is going to be about. AEW World Title, Jon Moxley versus Brody Lee. So when it comes to the matches, Stadium Stampede, they've done a really good job of building that up. I think everything they've done with Matt Hardy and Chris Jericho, the build to that has been good. I think Matt Hardy's been presented very well. The whole Damascus character switching back to his regular self, I think all that's been done very well. I thought using Sammy Guevara they did throughout this was great. I think Jericho's had great promos. Hardy's got great promos here. A lot of good things that went along with it. When you had Vanguard 1 being shut down, you had the Elite winning in several matches, getting the upper hand. Going back to the Bucks and seeing Matt Jackson get pummeled Remember that? Was it Matt or Nick? I forget which one. But there's a lot of back and forth with Inner Circle and the Elite. This is like just an ongoing feud that's going to go on. Now, Rosa Carter, Shida, I'm interested in that match. I'm just wondering, Shida has been good. They've definitely positioned her to look good as a contender, and they've had her take on everybody. So that should be a pretty strong women's match for those that think the women's division of AEW is a little bit suspect, right? So anyway, I think Best Friends beat Private Party, and Best Friends will be tag team contenders, number one contenders coming up. I think Dustin Rhodes will beat Shawn Spears. I don't know. Shawn Spears, they're obviously not giving him any wins. I don't know if they're going to give him one here. Don't know if they want to do that or not. I say Britt Baker will get the win over Chris Statlander. I think Britt Baker, you keep her going in, keeping her hot, because I don't know. I feel like Britt Baker is going to get herself closer to that title soon enough, and I think they're going to do things to help put her up in the rankings to get her closer to that number one contention once again. The Casino Ladder match, I'm going to say Darby Allin is the one that'll win out of that. Now, I don't know what what's going to be the ladder match itself. I think is it supposed to be a number one contendership for the AEW title? I'm not sure. I don't know if they actually said what the match will determine. So they're going to figure what that's all about. But we do know that next week on AEW Dynamite, there will be a battle royal to determine the TNT title challenger for the June 3rd Dynamite. So after they crown a champion, they'll find a number one contender to go after the TNT title. The first person that'll go up against Cody or Lance Archer, whoever wins that match. But for my end of the bargain, I think Darby Allin wins the Casino Ladder match. I say, and I think Jungle Boy, they want to give him the win. MJF already is undefeated, and I can see where Jungle Boy gets the first win over MJF. I think Jungle Boy's got a lot to be said. They could put him here, but maybe I think MJF's going to take the win. I think Nyla Rose is going to take care of Hikaru Shida. I think that's where we're going to go there. I think Cody will become the first ever TNT champion. I think for him not to go ahead and be the world champion, but to take this TNT title makes me think that we're gonna go there first. I don't think Lance Archer gets it first. I think Cody gets it first and runs with that belt for a while. I think the Elite will win the Stadium Stampede, and then finally Jon Moxley, Brody Lee. The Brody Lee Jon Moxley feud. I mean, Brody Lee, they haven't had a lot of time to go and build him up, and the one thing that's really kind of rough is the Brody Lee character. He's only as strong as the people he has around him, because this Dark Order doesn't look that strong. Yeah, they get in numbers, but really there are not a lot of people in that Dark Order that really make that stable strong. And again, no Evil Uno and no Grayson. As you notice, we haven't seen them in a while. So to see Brody Lee out there with a bunch of Scrabinis out there, and the guy 10, who was a good wrestler, had a good match tonight, but there really wasn't much to him anyway against Jon Moxley. But they had a pretty good match together. I think Jon Moxley takes care of Brody Lee. And I think Brody Lee, I don't know where we go from here, but I think Brody Lee, I think Dark Order becomes something else, because obviously they're trying to take over. So winning the title is going to be only so much of a gimmick for this. I think that's where they go with this. And Jon Moxley retains the title. That's where I think things go. Finally, I wanted to take a couple of things I'm going to talk about when it comes to WWE itself. Now, in the show itself, it's been rough to watch. I really mean that. I have struggled to watch that show and try to keep myself in. Raw and SmackDown are so tough to watch. This is where before this Shad Gaspard story broke out, I really was going to talk about the fact of how, I think that when WWE has their creative meetings, when they're in that corporate cubicle environment, which they're not now, they're working from home most likely, but what they're doing right now, everything they've been trained to do in terms of creative is in order to get a response from a crowd that does not exist and has not existed for 2.5 months now, and that's where we are. So I mean, we're in a spot right now where I'm not feeling much of anything. I just feel like we're in a spot where this company needs to have a crowd, and I think they should be doing whatever they can to get a crowd in front of them, whether it's a few people or not. They need it badly, because just watching the flashing lights around and hearing the music and hearing everybody talk loud and hearing Cole or Tom Phillips and hearing the excited, amplified, announcing of the WWE announcers and everything else that's going on, it feels so weird to watch in the ring, because you can just tell they haven't really altered the presentation any different than we would in front of a crowd. That's what I feel like right now. It feels really weird, and it's hard to watch. And I think what they did with WrestleMania was very good. I thought what they did with Money in the Bank was not bad, but it's really, really tough to watch, and it's just not been that good. I haven't enjoyed it much at all. I don't know what you do at this point, but right now they're in a tough spot. It just doesn't sound, it's tough to watch, and there's not much that they have right now except for just having match after match after match, which they can't really need to do that. I mean, they have to be doing other things. I mean, doing little stuff backstage, but no real vignettes, no real things where we're seeing something just to kind of like break away from being stuck all in the performance center and not being able to do anything else. This is a time where the cinematic stuff that they have been doing, which has done well for them, but they can't do that every week. They're trying to keep it special. Of everything they're trying to do, this is the one thing they're trying to keep special. The other thing, too, is that it's their ongoing issues where you're taking a couple hits, right? You don't have Roman Reigns. The pandemic has kept him away this whole time. Daniel Bryan has been there and not. And he's not been positioned very high. AJ Styles away because after the Undertaker match, and then brought on for the Money in the Bank ladder match, right? Becky Lynch going away to be a mom. I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of underlying factors here that are really making it tough for this company, and that's where they're at. So I don't know what they do right now, but they're in a tough spot altogether with all the wrestling. I look at their numbers right now for the shows, and they're struggling. 1.7 million as a total average for Raw on Monday night. And for last week, SmackDown, SmackDown 2 weeks ago, 2.09, and I think it was 1.9 million last week. But again, barely scraping 2 million for their show there. And, I mean, anemic numbers to 1.7 million for Raw. I mean, it's getting tough. I mean, same thing for AEW and NXT. Collectively being able to put together about 1.3 million viewers as a whole on Wednesday nights. Everybody's having troubles, man. And it's not gotten better. And I believe AEW has done the right things to help improve their product. They're trying to take the steps they can by being in Florida, and they're taking every advantage that they can to go ahead and continue to move forward and to make the show much more like what people are accustomed to. And they're the ones that have done it the most. But right now, everybody else has run out of programming. I mean, MLW ran out. Now they're running their anthology series where they're basically running back all their past footage from the early 2000s and the official run of the MLW back in the day. Impact Wrestling tape shows after Rebellion or the week of Rebellion, and they're empty arenas. So, like, we're all in a spot where, like, everything just feels kind of flat. AEW is the only ones that are giving us kind of a crowd, and that's it. But everything else is just people in the ring, loud shouting, announcing, and that's it. And the empty arena stuff, I think people are just getting a little fed up. It's not fed up in terms of it being all bad. I just think people just can't take it. It's not. This is where you had to do something else. I mean, NWA, for its credit, this week they started Carneyland. So they're going to have different series they're going to put out on YouTube, which, it's a good buffer. It's not wrestling, but the wrestlers are going to get to do something that will keep themselves out there, and at least the quirky character of the NWA continues on without anything in ring for a while now. Ring of Honor has had nothing to work off of. And that's where we are. Now, Is there anything that the WWE has done right now that I think has been very well done? There's some things I guess you could say when I think about it. When I look at what they've been doing as of late, you look at Raw this week, and you start off with Randy Orton and Edge. I mean, okay, yeah, that match is going to be good. They're going to put that together. So Edge accepts Randy Orton's challenge. They'll have a match, a regular match. So going backwards on having the big no-holds-barred match at WrestleMania and coming back to this feud once again, is something to do. So they both worked well together. That's fine. I can't take Seth Rollins to the Money in that Messiah gimmick. It's just, I think it's adequate. It's not him. He's delivering it, but it doesn't feel credible. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel interesting. I'm not into this Rollins character, and I think it's because it needs a crowd. We need I want validation from a crowd that's booing the shit out of him and throwing stuff at him and really tearing it up to him. I want to hear a response of a crowd because I think that's what's missing. This heel character has no bite to it. And what can you do when you don't have a crowd? There's only so much you can do with the character. You might as well just go ahead with it anyway because maybe the TV audience will kind of just resonate. Then you have the crossover of stars, NXT. You have Charlotte Flair, who's NXT Women's Champion, beat up on Ruby Riott. Nia Jax now is going to go up against Asuka. Now that it's all said and done, Asuka's champion. So Nia Jax in the picture. Bobby Lashley is being kept up. They're trying to keep him a little bit more strong. I'm curious if they want to keep MVP out there with Bobby Lashley. I mean, obviously, we know that we saw what they did together in Impact Wrestling, which was some of the best stuff that both of them did. Because Bobby Lashley with MVP was a great gimmick. Was really great. But it's obvious that WWE is not going to give that kind of time for MVP to really get Bobby Lashley over like he should. He's not so much of a manager as he is a business partner. So, advocate. It's basically, they don't want to have managers. They're going to have MVP as an advocate for Bobby Lashley. Will that work like Paul Heyman does? It depends if they're going to let him go. Well, they're actually now, they're letting Bobby Lashley eye for the title against I think one of the best, a protected Drew McIntyre. I think Drew McIntyre is probably the best booked wrestler right now. He's been booked very strong, kept a good character. He's not a dumb babyface, but he's a true babyface, but he's not dumb and aggressive and strong, and he's made very strong. They're doing right with him. And obviously it's because of a trust factor. I mean, they know what they're getting with Drew McIntyre, and he's doing it. He's doing what he could have been doing years ago, but they're getting it right with him. I'm not kidding when I say Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Was it 2 weeks ago they were on SmackDown with either... Oh, who were they on with? Yeah, they were on with Braun Strowman and they were on with somebody else. Let me tell you, them together doing a moment of bliss, I just changed the channel. If I see them on TV now, I change the channel. I'm not interested. I think Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, I don't understand where they could have teased the breakup and they never did. But it's about time to do that. But they don't have any tag team champions to go ahead and give the belts to. And the fact that the Iconics lost by DQ, and now it was even kind of a tease that the Iconics might even break up. Well, what is that going to do? Because I think Alexa and Nikki could go ahead and be together and split off into a feud, and you could have that. But I don't know who you're going to have as tag team champions and who you're going to do anything with those belts. This is where those belts really were never necessary, I believe. They never really needed those belts. Hard enough to go and keep the singles wrestlers as they are to have a tag team title. Just doesn't mean much. I mean, Shayna Baszler working with Natalya here. And my thing is, I just feel like Natalya sits there to fit a role for Shayna Baszler because they have nothing else for her. They've already lost steam on Shayna Baszler. That's incredible. One of the longest reigning champions they had in NXT, a stronghold in NXT for a couple of years. They don't know what to do with this woman. I'm amazed. But they had her quick work with Becky Lynch, and she's been relegated to the women's mid-card, working with Natalya. That's horrible. They had a submission match, so there was a reason for that. But again, that's it. Kevin Owens, he was injured during his stunt during the WrestleMania, getting his WrestleMania moment. He does this KO show, gives an opportunity to go and bring Zelina's faction all together. And that's it. And again, King Corbin, yeah, he's a good heel, but I think he gets X-Pac heat. I think he's just, I don't like the King gimmick on him, and I just think that King Corbin needs a lackey. I think he does need somebody to work. I mean, him just to be a king and not have any subservience, that doesn't look right. I mean, he has nobody to work off of. And that's what's unfortunate. And that's where they are with everything right now. Now, on the SmackDown side, they really are essing the bed with Otis. I hated his segment with Miz and Morrison. I mean, they're trying to do things with him and it's not working, right? It's just not. I personally have enjoyed everything they've been doing right now with Sonya Deville. I think her and the Mandy feud has been very fun to watch. I think I've really enjoyed that a lot. The IC title tournament, now we know that we're not sure about everything going on when it comes to that, but, with SmackDown, it's like IC title is what they're going to be focused on here. Sami Zayn, probably for whatever reason, it's not a legitimate reason, I guess, that the IC title is being stripped from him, but they're going to do it anyway. So Elias wins. Then your Bryan wins. And by the way, Drew Gulak, in his last match, he's out the door because he finished up his contract. Decided not to resign. And then Braun and Otis match up together. That's pretty much it. Ugh. Not impressed. And Braun Strowman just feels out of place with this belt. I just feel like he's been given the belt because there's nobody else to put the belt on him with. So Daniel Bryan has moved on to the IC title tournament. Elias has moved on. And Jeff Hardy takes on Sheamus. AJ against Shinsuke. They'll take on each other in the next bracket this week. That's it. They give us Naomi and Dana Brooke on SmackDown. I'm like, ugh. I know they want to do something with Dana Brooke. I feel like there's something being done with her. And obviously, Dana Brooke getting the win quickly. Naomi getting brought back after a while of being gone. And just again, she's like Natalya now. Naomi, why she did not get herself elevated back to a title picture tells you a lot of things. I'm wondering if she's just being held back for what. So I'm not sure what it is. I know this week they got Billy and Charlotte, Otis and Mandy against Dolph and Sonya. So the mixed tag we've always expected pretty soon enough. And then the IC title tournament continues, and that's pretty much it. So, again, I love Sonya and Mandy. I think Sonya's been doing a great job. I like the back and forth they're giving each other on Twitter. You can just tell they know each other's characters very well. It's been good. And I do think they're going to have something where Sonya will get screwed, or the Otis will get screwed by Mandy, I think, at some point. Maybe that'll happen. I don't know how that will be, but, it is what it is. I mean, Braun and Otis, yeah, they did the whole thing where Otis had the briefcase and teased. I didn't feel too much about that. I don't understand what they were doing with him. They're not using Otis right. But I also think it's not like he's not a bad wrestler, not a good character, but I don't see what he does here in this role. And what I don't get is why Heavy Machinery did not get more of a role in the tag team title picture. I mean, personally, I think Miz and Morrison against Heavy Machinery would have been much better. And I don't know. I mean, not New Day. New Day's kind of just done. I just think you could have done something else, and you could have, I don't know, another tag team and just put something else together. And not Forgotten Sons, because they're not working. But again, tag team picture, that's another thing too. You also don't have your full roster. When you have all those people that you laid off, they're not coming back right now because of furloughs. There's so many different scenarios that are going on here that it's making tough to watch the product. And now all those things are coming into play. Everything's full circle. That's what's tough. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Got an hour for you. I'm going to come back on Saturday night, and I will do a recap of Double or Nothing for all of you to go and check out. Look for it right here at WrestlingIsReal.com. And, of course, where you find the podcast. All the places, okay? Apple Podcasts. Please do a rate and review. Find me on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, all those great places. But, again, most importantly, WrestlingIsReal.com. That's where you find the show. I'll catch you guys after Double or Nothing. Enjoy it. And until then, come back for another Wrestling is Real podcast for the recap, because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast, brought to you by KingofAmazon.com. For more information on how to subscribe to the show, how to share the Wrestling is Real podcast to listeners like you, and check out the latest wrestling headlines, go to WrestlingIsReal.com. That's WrestlingIsReal.com.